23 season of ADAC GT Masters. Brilliant driving. It's phenomenal stuff.
Race 6 of a 12-race season for the ADAC GT Masters. And in a little over an hour's time, we will have reached the halfway point of the season. It is a season, well, up until yesterday, it had featured different winners of every race. But yesterday, it was Elias Seppänen and Salmon Vega who became the first repeat winners of the 2023 season. And in so doing, moved themselves to the top of the point standings. And they lead Janis Fitcher, Nico Menzel by just 4 points. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Nürburgring. Very different conditions to yesterday, where the showers were nearby and the track was wet. We haven't had any rain today. Air temperature is 20.9 degrees centigrade. The track is at 18.7 degrees, so it's not exactly scorching, and it's very windy. There is a massive crowd in here to witness the ADAC GT Masters round 3 of the season, the last round before we head into our summer break. We have been part of the European Truck Racing Grand Prix this weekend, so we've been witnessing something very different indeed to what we'd normally expect at a regular ADAC weekend. And the crowd that are here, complete with cowboy hats and honking horns and all the rest of it, have enjoyed some GT Masters racing, maybe some seeing it for the very first time. The clock is ticking down. As you can see, we are 8 minutes away from the start of this race, and it will be, as already mentioned, the 6th of a 12-race season. It has been a compelling start to the season, a very different kind of year for the ADAC GT Masters as it regathers after what has been a slightly tumultuous winter. But we've seen the grid numbers increasing, and that car there, the number 63 GRT Grassa Racing Lamborghini, lines up on pole position. Marco Mappelli taking his first ever pole position in the ADAC GT Masters. It's his 67th start, and he has won twice in the past, but he's never done it from pole position. He, along with teammate Benjamin Heites, were 100th of a second ahead of fellow front row starter, the number 20 Schubert Motor Racing BMW, which was being driven by Ben Green in qualifying this morning. The British driver who came oh so close to pole position. He said to me this morning, I am going for the win. Watch him into turn 1. We saw Salmon Vega yesterday get the jump on Tim Zimmerman into turn 1. It was Zimmerman who started on pole position, but Vega took a faster line into that first corner. And it is a tricky corner, but that is where Ben Green is sincerely hoping he can make the jump on Marco Mappelli. It has to be said, though, Marco Mappelli has been doing the rounds for many years in GT racing and in GT Masters, and he knows that Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo 2 very well indeed, and he will be putting up quite a defense of that first position. That's the car that starts third on the grid, Sven Muller, who had something of a subdued day yesterday along with co-pilot Finn Gerschitz, and will be starting third on the grid in the team used by Race Motion Porsche. 10th was all he could manage yesterday. And there's a driver that we welcome to the grid of the ADAC GT Masters. We welcome Mega Marco in the BMW M4 GT3 that has been run by Project One, and Marco Wittmann, who is sharing driving duties with Sandro Holzem, a name that will be familiar to those of you that were watching ADAC GT4 last year. Sandro Holzem, along with his brother Giuliano, were racing an Aston Martin in the GT4. Sandro, though, has been very much mooted for a seat in DTM and is using this very much as a training session with Marco Wittmann as his mentor. And there is yesterday's winner, Elias Seppänen, along with Salmon Vega. They did a sterling job yesterday and eventually crossed the finish line some 15+ seconds ahead of second place. It was a truly dominant performance for the number 48 Landgraf Motorsport Mercedes. It was another Mercedes that finished in second place, and that was the HRT Mercedes, being driven by Alan Valente and Ralph Aron. And they were running in 8th place initially, and they moved up the field on account of a late pit stop. They managed to get the overcut on all the cars apart from one and ended up finishing the race in second place. It was a race that was very much won on pit strategy and, of course, driving skill. And there is Jackson Evans, the New Zealand driver for Huber Racing, who finished in 5th place yesterday. The car started on pole position, was carrying an extra 5 kilos of success penalty. Didn't quite have the pace to finish on the podium. Arjun Maini, another of the DTM drivers racing for HRT, and he starts in the number 3 car. Had a 12th place yesterday, so hoping for better things today. And starting from 7th on the grid, in a good position to do that. Some unique angles of the drivers. Those are the knees of Arjun Maini, ladies and gentlemen, as he sits in that Mercedes, ready for the off of this race. As already mentioned, the points championship is incredibly close. It's Elias Seppänen and Salmon Vega at the top, 4 points ahead of Janis Fischer, Nico Menzel. Finn Gersitz, Sven Muller, 5 points away from the top of the championship lead. And then Tim Zimmerman and Jackson Evans in the number 92 Huber Racing Porsche are in 4th place, 9 points adrift. Marcel Marchewitz is a name that we welcome to the grid of GT Masters. Very familiar to those who follow GT4, and he is featured in the ADAC GT4. Certainly last year was always there, troubling the front runners in the Schnitzelam Mercedes. And Schnitzelam, who are based just down the road here from the Nürburgring, have entered the GT Masters for the first time this weekend as guest starters, and they are very welcome indeed. You may wonder why there's a truck at the side of the track. It's because it is the pace truck, as the Schurze gives the gentleman start your engine signal to the drivers. That truck is instead of a safety car. To celebrate the fact that we are at the Truck Grand Prix, there are going to be 2 formation laps here for the ADAC GT Masters. There will be 1 formation lap as per normal, in which drivers will be able to warm tyres and brakes. Then there will be a 2nd formation lap behind the safety truck. That will be done at a slightly reduced pace, but the clock will start on this 60-minute race. It is 60 minutes plus 1 lap. It is a GT3 sprint race with a mandatory pit stop. And the pit stop will come 25 minutes into the race. There will be a pit window that will open for 10 minutes. And during that window, every driver will need to visit the pit lane. As we look at Sven Muller, you can just see him gathering himself. What a great shot into his eyes. You could just see 1,000 thoughts flowing through his head, really, can't you? The engines are running, the cars in their traditional Le Mans formation now pull out onto the track. We are at the Nürburgring, under the shadow of Nürburg Castle. It is a circuit that is 3.629 kilometers around with 11 turns, 4 to the left and 7 to the right. About 7.7 meters of elevation change. Best overtaking point is probably into turn 1, but it is a very tricky corner. It's a lot more downhill than you realise, and as the cars brake at the end of the pit straight and then turn into turn 1, it's a dips downhill. We see many moves there, but it's also a great place to come unstuck, and we saw a couple of cars spinning into that first corner in the opening lap of yesterday's race. So it's one to keep an eye on as the cars now circulate on their formation lap, the first of 2, and it is that critical time to get the heat into the tyres and into the brakes. No tyre warmers allowed in GT Masters. Just to remind you of the success penalty in GT Masters, and it is Elias Seppänen and Salmon Vega who are carrying an extra 20 kilos for this race as a result of winning yesterday. Ralph Aron and Alan Valente have an extra 10 kilos. And Max Paul and Simon Connor Prin have an extra 5 kilos. And it's great to welcome Paul Racing back onto the grid. Max Paul, who is now a four-time third place finish in GT Masters. He's starting a little bit further back on the grid for this race in 9th place, so a bit of work to do from there. Simon Conner-Prim making his debut in GT Masters, having moved from GT4, and he has also proven to be something of a revelation yesterday. Really rapid, and of course, coming home third place in his first ever race. That is no mean feat. Now, this is a sight that you may not see again. It is a very unusual sight, a truck leading the field in the ADAC GT Masters. Up until yesterday, I'm not aware of it ever happening before. It is something quite unique here at the European Truck Racing Grand Prix. It has been a spectacular weekend. If you like your trucks, boy, have we got a few here over this weekend. Let's have a look at the starting grid. And it is Marco Mappelli, the Italian, who puts the Lamborghini on pole position, with Ben Green in the Schubert Motorsport BMW alongside. On row 2 of the grid, Sven Muller, the experienced Porsche driver, as another BMW. Marco Wittmann, 2 times DTM champion for Project One Motorsport. Elias Seppänen, yesterday's winner in the Landgraf Mercedes, lines up alongside Jackson Evans for Christoph Huber's team. And on row 4, Arjun Maini has Marcel Marcevic for company. Welcome to the grid, Schnitzelam Racing. On row 5, Max Paul, yesterday's third place finisher, is alongside Ralph Aron, yesterday's second place finisher. And on row 6 of the grid, Neil Verhagen, who's sitting in for Igor Valilko this weekend, and Nico Menzel for Huber Motorsport. On row 7, Kwanda Mokoene, one of the Exler team drivers, and Jonas Gelginis alongside. And then bringing up the rear, we welcome Justas Janušić, who is racing for Nordpass by Jutta Racing. So great to have a couple of extra drivers on the grid guesting for this weekend. But now the formation lap is complete. The drivers head up around towards turn 11 on this tricky little circuit here at the Nürburgring, and we will be getting ready in a few moments for 60 minutes of action. The safety truck will pull off into the pit lane, and it will be Marco Mappelli and Ben Green who lead the field along the pit straight. So out of 11 they come. Ahead of them they will see the 4 red lights. Are you ready? This is race 6 of the ADAC GT Masters season 2023. We're waiting on those lights, waiting to go, and go we do. Elias Seppänen taking a little look to the side, but ducks back into line. It's Marco Mappelli who leads into turn 1. Not a great start at the moment from Ben Green, but under braking, he's trying to come back round the outside. Keep an eye on Marco Wittmann in 4th place. We can see that Marco Mappelli has it absolutely tied up. Ben Green comes back into that 2nd place, riding on board with Sven Muller in the 3rd place. So the cars all make it around turn 1. Sven Muller coming under pressure from Marco Wittmann, running 3 abreast further back. But it's Marco Mappelli. Ben Green getting a little bit leery out of the corner, but holds it all together. Now Marco Wittmann challenging for that 3rd place from Sven Muller. The BMW to the inside of the Porsche. Also Jackson Evans in there as well, also challenging in a Porsche. But it is Marco Wittmann who moves up into 3rd place. Sven Muller into 4th. And Jackson Evans in 5th place. Elias Seppänen, yesterday's winner, in 6th place. Looking back from Sven Muller and Jackson Evans. The car's now settling down into a single file. So everybody's made it around that first lap, but it's Marco Mappelli who leads the way ahead of Ben Green. And it's Marco Wittmann who moves up into 3rd place. Great move from the DTM pilot. Now keep an eye on Jackson Evans, who's challenging Sven Muller. And Evans, who's looking pretty eager, wants to make up for what was a fairly quiet day yesterday. That is Elias Seppänen ducking right out of line, taking a completely different line along the pit straight. And not sure what he gained from that. He now ducks back into the line. Neil Verhagen there as well, taking a look on the inside. And that is the view back at Jackson Evans from the perspective of Sven Muller. A Porsche looking back at a Porsche. So to remind you, it is a 60-minute race plus 1 lap. And there is that mandatory pit stop Car 48 is under investigation for a false start. Now, we did say we saw Elias Seppänen ducking out of line and then moving back in again before the green lights came on. He is under investigation. I have a horrible feeling he may well be about to visit the penalty box, because the drivers are required to pass through their grid boxes before they cross the start-finish line, and he did duck out of line. So the steward's taking a look at that, so there may be a penalty incoming for yesterday's winner, and that will be bad news, because a penalty box visit would do something similar to adding 5 seconds on to the lap time. Riding on board with Arjun Maini, looking back at Max Paul then. Some great camera angles here in the ADAC GT Masters. As always, there's Arjun Maini. Curbs, what curbs? Just drives over the lot of them. And Max Paul in the Lamborghini, yesterday's third place, is just behind him. So here comes Marco Mappelli. He crosses the line. Let's see what kind of gap he's managed to pull on Ben Green. 9/10 of a second. So Ben doing a great job in second place. Didn't quite manage to mug him at the start as he'd hoped to. Was very busy defending from Sven Muller at the start. And then Marco Wittmann also getting through into that third place. Now, challenges for position further back. That is Ralph Aron, who is behind the number 10 car, Neil Verhagen, who is a BMW factory driver. Great to have him here in the GT Masters for this weekend. Ahead of him is Marcel Marchewitz in the Schnitzelam Mercedes. Marchewitz, who had a lively day yesterday, sharing with Colin Karazani, the Dutch driver, both of them making their debuts this weekend in the GT Masters. So Marco Mappelli leads the way from Ben Green, Marco Wittmann. So Green is in a Marco sandwich with Sven Muller in fourth place, Jackson Evans in fifth, and Elias Seppänen under investigation in sixth place. Then it's Marcel Marchewitz, Neil Verhagen, then Ralph Aron, Nico Menzel in the red, white and blue Porsche, looking eager. Now looked like a challenge for position up ahead, and it was Marco Wittmann. It's BMW versus BMW. Wittmann getting round the outside of Ben Green in turn 11. Now down towards turn 1. Will Ben Green be able to come back? You can see the frustration adjusting the car as he heads under the braking into turn 1. Wittmann moves across to block him. Now Green will try and get back to the inside, but Wittmann looks like he's stolen that position away, shuts the door into turn 2, and it's BMW versus BMW in favour of Marco Wittmann. So Ben Green now down into third place. And looking at the timing screens, he was the quickest of anybody in Sector 1 on the previous lap, but despite that, it was Marco Wittmann who found a route through and stole the position away. Now, Sven Muller closing in on Ben Green. You can see the view back from Sven Muller on the picture to the left of your screen, and he's looking back at Jackson Evans in the Huber Racing Porsche. So there's our race leader. Marco Mappelli has opened up quite a gap. So last time across a timing beam, it was 2.1 seconds. So Mappelli is really opening up that gap very rapidly. The Lamborghini looking very dialed in this weekend, bumping across the curbs. Now, what can Mega Marco do about Mappelli? The very experienced driver. Unbelievably, it is Wittmann's first ever start in GT Masters, but he is so experienced. We saw him last weekend at the Nürburgring in front of his home crowd, and he was buzzing. And here he is now about a couple of 100 kilometers down the road at the Nürburgring, doing it all again. And he is in second place. So the rest of the cars come. There is a penalty lap being awarded to 2 cars, to Elias Seppänen and also to Neil Verhagen. Both of them for a false start. Both of them ducked out of line before they crossed the start-finish line. If we look here at the replay, you'll see the gold and white Mercedes and the black and blue BMW. Keep an eye on them. Well, there is Seppänen on the third row. You'll see, before we go, he ducks out of line, and there on Verhagen as well. So both the cars that ducked out of line, and they didn't pass through their grid boxes. This is a better angle to see, and you can see there's Seppänen and Verhagen. They've both received a penalty lap, What is a penalty lap, you may well ask? It is a white box painted on the track on the exit of turn 1. You can see it there on the right-hand side of your picture. And both of those cars will have to pass through that penalty box at no more than 50 kilometers an hour for one lap. It takes them off the racing line. It is less severe than a drive-through penalty, but with the field this bunched up, it will hurt their afternoon somewhat and put them about what will roughly be 5 seconds further back from where they are at the moment. Here's a replay of Marco Wittmann getting round the outside of Ben Green along the pit straight. Ben Green picked up the slipstream into turn 1, looked like he was about to fight back. You could see, I think it was brake bias from my very lacking wisdom on the inside of a car, but he was adjusting the car into turn 1, and there is your confirmation of Neil Verhagen and Elias Seppänen having to visit the penalty box. And there is your confirmation of your leader. Look at that, Marco Mappelli. He has opened up quite a gap from Marco Wittmann. Ben Green is staying with second place because he's not done yet. Sven Muller a little back, and then it is Jackson Evans, Elias Seppänen, Marcel Marchewitz, and Neil Verhagen. But of course, those two drivers, Verhagen and Seppänen, will need to pass through the penalty box now. Seppänen has done it. You can see on the graphic how that has hurt him. So he tumbles down the order as a result of passing through the penalty box, as does Verhagen. They have to do it within a lap of receiving the penalty. Otherwise, they will pick up another penalty. So they need to get on and do it. That's exactly what's happened. So now the graphic on the left of your screen tells you what the situation is now that the penalty laps have been served. Marco Mappelli leading Marco Wittmann. It was 2.468 last time across the line. We're going to have another look now and see whether Wittmann can do anything about that. 2.462, so give or take a thousandth, the gap has remained the same between first and second. Ben Green now struggling a little, stay with Wittmann, and Sven Muller is going to be putting the pressure on to the BMW before too long. But of course, he's got Jackson Evans, so the two Porsches very much running together, and Jackson Evans looking to move forwards from his 5th place. Evans, who finished 5th yesterday, he's had a win, and that was at the opening race in Hockenheim. He had a 3rd place last weekend at the Nürburgring, but would dearly love to get back on the podium and to get the championship really alive and kicking. Our championship leader, though, Elias Seppänen, along with Salman Vega, down in 10th place. So that is not going to help them as they try to extend their lead at the top of the points standing. So keep an eye on Jackson Evans in 5th place in the orange and black Porsche. Keep an eye on Sven Muller in the very brightly coloured Team Use yellow and blue Porsche, who's in front of him in 4th place. So Marco Mappelli continues, 2.462 last time across the line. We're keeping an eye to see whether Wittmann can do anything about that gap that is between them. Across the line they come. It was 2.462 last time, and Mappelli has in fact opened up the gap. So Marco Mappelli making hay while the sun shines. He's got an open track in front of him, and Mega Marco in 2nd place, trying to do as much as he can with that BMW before he hands it over to Sandra Holzem, who will be doing the 2nd stint in the seat of that car. Remember, when the clock strikes 35 to go, that is when the pit window will open, and there will be a 10-minute window when every driver will need to visit the pits for a mandatory stop and driver change. Tyre changes, though, are not permitted, so it's not just about going hell for leather in this race, because the tyres do need to go the distance, and if you wear the tyres out now, your co-driver is not going to thank you for that in 45 minutes time when they're struggling to get the thing home. That's a great view of Sven Muller. You can see how much work he's having to do on the wheel. You can see him looking to the mirror. What a great shot that is. Gives you a real perspective. And he's paying a lot of attention to the mirrors, and that's because Jackson Evans is filling them. It is Porsche v Porsche. Neither driver is carrying a success penalty in this race, so it is just raw pace. And it does look at the moment as though Jackson Evans has got potentially the quicker of the two cars. but getting past is not the work of a moment. These cars so evenly matched, and the balance of performance making that even more so. Across the line comes Marco Mappelli once again, now 2.311. So Wittmann has closed the gap up a little. The incident between car 2 and 3 in turn 4, lap 1, no further action. So we didn't see that. So that would be Ralph Aron and teammate Arjun Maini. So clearly they got together somewhere along the way on the opening lap, but there is nothing to be done about that. The stewards have taken a look at it and say that there is no case to answer. There is Arjun Maini in the number 3 car. Look at him pedaling away. Great shot there, the angle from the driver's legs and the steering wheel gives you a real perspective of how much work they're doing in the car. This is no Sunday afternoon drive here at the Nürburgring. This is hard work for these athletes and these cars that are racing in race 6 for the ADAC GT Masters 2023. And it is Marco Mappelli who leads the way. Just in the background there, here comes Kwanda Mokoena. He is in the Liquimoli Team Engstler Audi, and that is a team that has been run by the legendary Engstler family, and Luca Engstler has been coaching Kwanda Mokoena. It has been a steep learning curve, and he is getting better with each race. A 13th place at the moment, good job, but the 3 Audis all seem to be struggling. We've got 3 Audis at the rear of the pack at the moment, including Jonas Gelginis and also Justas Jonosis in the number 23 car, guesting this weekend in preparation for the Aurum 1,006-kilometre race that they're going to be racing in very, very shortly. And they are using the GT Masters very much as a great opportunity to hone their skills in GT racing. You can see the lap evolution. Jackson Evans is not allowing Sven Muller to get away. Far from it. Sven Muller falling back into the clutches. So the gap between Sven Muller and Jackson Evans, just 0.3 of a second. The gap between Ben Green and Sven Muller, 1.3. So Sven Muller, far from attacking, now having to defend. And with Jackson Evans clear of Marcel Marchevitz to the tune of about 2.4 seconds, he is free to attack the car in front without too much of a risk of losing position to the car behind, because Marchevitz is just a little bit too far back to jump if a gap does appear. Here comes Marco Mappelli once again. Now, Wittmann has taken about half a second out of it. No, now 1.7. So suddenly, Marco Wittmann has found a bit of pace and is starting to reel in Marco Mappelli. There is Tim Zimmerman looking on in the Huber Racing team. And he is keeping an eye on his teammate, Jackson Evans. He'll be taking over the 92 car when the pit window opens, which will be in just over 7 minutes. So one would suggest that the cars that are running on open track may stay out longer in the pit window. You may also suggest that the teams will try to maximize their quickest drivers. So Marco Wittmann would expect to see him in the seat well into that pit window, as indeed would probably be the case for Ben Green, as they are more experienced than their co-drivers. But there is such a lot of strategy in the pit stop. We saw it yesterday with Ralph Aron and Alan Valente. When they swapped over, Valente stayed out right to the end of the pit window, and in so doing was able to overcut the cars in front and come out into that second place and retain the second place. And they did that almost under the radar while we were focusing on the leader and the battles for the other places. So here comes Mappelli across the line. It was 1.7 last time they crossed the start-finish line. Let's see what it is now. 1.721 last time, 1.329. Marco Wittmann has halved the gap in about 2 laps, so he is closing in on the Lamborghini. Can he get the number 56 of BMW in front before he hands it over to Sandra Holzem? That is the question very much on our lips, and it's going to be very compelling to see what he can do. Here come the 3 Audis towards the back of the pack. There's Kwanda Mokoena and Jonas Gelginis, and then Justas Jonusis in the number 23 car. But this is second place. Marco Wittmann, so good to have him in the GT Masters here at the Nürburgring, guesting in the Project One BMW. Project One, who joined the GT Masters for this race. We've already mentioned Sandra Holzem and how they are really labelling his journey as the road to DTM. And I think the plan is to have him in a DTM seat before this season is over in the DTM Championship. And no better training than in GT Masters. The cars are pretty well identical to those raced in DTM. The only difference being that it is a two-driver affair in GT Masters, whereas in DTM it is just one driver the full distance. Also in DTM, tyre changes are allowed. In GT Masters, you've got to make them go the distance. So out onto the pit straight we come once again. Marco Mappelli, 1.1 seconds to the good of Marco Wittmann, who is 2.7 seconds ahead of Ben Green. That's the 1, 2, 3. Keep an eye on Nico Menzel behind there, coming under pressure from Arjun Maini, another of the DTM drivers who is racing here in the GT Masters. This is for 8th place. Nico Menzel running in that 8th place at the moment. He shares driving duties with Yanis Fitcher. Had a 9th place yesterday. A fairly subdued day yesterday, I think, although they were carrying a success penalty of 20 kilos. They haven't got that today, but it seems like this time last week where they won from pole position probably feels like a bit of a distant memory. A very different kind of circuit to the Nürburgring where we were last weekend. Also very different kind of weather conditions as well. It is a little chillier here. It was in the mid-30s this time last week. The track temperature at the moment is at 18.7 degrees centigrade. So keeping the tyres in the window is a challenge. And I'm told that getting them into the correct operating temperature and holding it there is quite a challenge for these drivers. And it is about tyre management. So there's Menzel, there's Arjun Maini in the background in 10th place, Elias Seppänen, having served that run through the penalty box. And then Maximilian Paul in 11th, then Neil Verhagen, another driver who's been through the penalty box as well, just in the background. But Nico Menzel in the red, white and blue Porsche. Now along the pit straight he comes into turn 1. Arjun Maini looks to the inside. Now he's going to try the outside. Is he going to cut back to the inside? No, he doesn't. Nico Menzel has proven to be very useful indeed, but he leaves a gap on the inside margin, makes contact, and Menzel goes spinning. And that is going to be looked at by the steward. So Nico Menzel goes to shut the door. Arjun Maini had his nose in the gap. The two cars make contact, and it is Nico Menzel who loses an awful lot of places. That's Kwanda Mokoena that's gone past, so that would have been 13th that has gone past, make that 12th. And he rejoins, so tragedy for Nico Menzel. And the stewards, as we suspected, having a good look at that. Now, whether Arjun Maini is going to be deemed to have stuck his nose in a place where it shouldn't have been, or whether they will decide that Nico Menzel left a big gap, then slammed the door in his face, we will find out very shortly. But it has ruined the afternoon for Nico Menzel, and he drops to the back of the pack. Arjun Maini now up into 8th place, subject to confirmation, with Elias Seppänen behind him. Seppänen coming under pressure from Max Paul in the Lamborghini. Out onto the pit straight we come. This is Arjun Maini looking up, and here we look again at it. Now let's take a look. So it's into turn 1. Maini looked to the outside, then cut back to the inside. Well, then went behind. Now there was a gap there, and to me, well, I'm not a steward, but to me, that looked like Maini had got the position and Menzel was trying to shut the door a little bit late. I may be very wrong, I normally am, and I am wrong because car 3 has been given 3 penalty laps for causing a collision. So Arjun Maini is going to have to pass through the penalty box 3 times. That will be the equivalent to a 15-second penalty. That is for causing a collision. Well, that just shows you why I'm not a race director, doesn't it? So Arjun Maini has been adjudged to be at fault in that. So 3 visits to the penalty box. That will drop him, well, probably easily behind Nico Menzel, I should think. So they may well come together again before this race is over. So that is high drama. Arjumani currently in 11th place, and the teams looking on. Huber Racing will not be impressed with that, and they will be licking their wounds, because although Arjumani picks up a penalty, it doesn't put Nico Menzel back in his position, does it? So it is going to be a long afternoon for the number 25 Huber Motorsport team, not to be mixed up with Huber Racing. Two completely different teams, one by Christoph Huber, he runs Huber Racing, and Reinhard Huber runs Huber Motorsport. Right, pit window is about to open now. And that 10-minute window, right, it's a great perspective. Miney taking to the penalty box. That one out of the way, and back up to speed. That's going to feel very painful for him. Arjumani, who is the first ever Indian driver in ADAC GT Masters. Great to have him here, but he's not enjoying the kind of success that he wants at the moment. He got a second place along with Petru Umberescu in the opening round at Hockenheim. But that's looking like a distant memory now. Nico Menzel fighting with Kwanda Mokoeno, taking to the dirt to try and work his way past. There is an element of frustration in Nico Menzel. I think Kwanda Mokoeno would be very happy just to give that place up for him and not put up a fight. It's not a battle that is his for this afternoon. And that is now under investigation as well. So Nico Menzel and Kwanda Mokoena under investigation by our race stewards for what looked like, I don't know if they made contact, but it was pretty close, and it was onto the dirt, wasn't it? But Nico Menzel is back through into 12th place, subject to confirmation, and working his way back up. And hey, look who's up ahead of him, Arjumani. It'll be interesting if they get together, isn't it? So there comes Arjumani now. There is Nico Menzel in the background, the white Arjumani car and the red, white and blue Nico Menzel car. Now, black and white flag has been shown to Kwanda Mokoena for forcing Nico Menzel off the track. The black and white flag is just a warning. But if any such incident occurs again, there may well be a penalty. Now look at this, the lead battle. While all of this has been going on, Marco Wittmann has reeled in Marco Mapelli. It's Marco v Marco at the top of the timing screens and at the front of the field. Just 0.5 of a second separating first and second. Well, that is closing up. So Marco Wittmann, now whether he's got the pace to do anything about the Lamborghini in front, of course we've got the pit stops that are going to come into play here as well. A lot of drivers, well all the drivers currently electing to stay out well into the window. Nobody's pitted yet. We've still got a little over 7.5 minutes. Right, here comes the first one. That is Ralph Aron, who peels off into the pit lane. He will be handing over to Alan Valente. Yesterday's second place finishes with that 10 kilogram success penalty. So into the pits they come, and you'll see the clock ticking down. There is a minimum pit stop time from pit entry to pit exit of 65 seconds. They must not go below that 65 seconds. They don't want to go too far over it as well. So fighting mid-pack. Now remember, yesterday, this was the team who stayed out really late into the pit window and did a monstrous overcut as a result. Well, they're kind of doing the opposite here today. They are the first team to pit. So Ralph Aron, the clock ticking down, only 2 mechanics allowed to work on the car at any one time. And there's the Lollipop Man as well. Ralph Aron now helping his co-pilot into the car, Alan Valente, all buckled up and plugged in. And then the countdown. He needs to time this right. What he really wants to do is hit the pit exit line when the clock strikes 0. But he doesn't want to get there early, and he's not allowed to just back off in the pit lane and crawl towards the line, because that would be perceived to be blocking the pit lane. Right, here come the leaders. You can see that Valente was 0.9 of a second is all he's lost in the pit stop, so that was pretty good going by the HRT crew. Now here comes the race leader once again, Marco Mapelli, Marco Wittmann, first and second. Across the line they come, and it's 0.4 of a second between first and second. Ben Green a little way back now, Sven Muller and Jackson Evans. No one else has come into the pits as of yet. And now Max Paul has done just that. So Max Paul, also Neil Verhagen into the pits. So in they come, ready for their stop. It's been great to have Max Paul here. We hope we can have you back again in GT Masters very, very soon. But his work is done for the weekend, and he hands over the duties to Simon Conner-Prim in the Paul Motorsport Lamborghini. Neil Verhagen, again, great to have him here as part of the GT Masters this weekend, and he hands over to Kim Louis Schramm. So, also in is Justas Janušis, and he's handing over to Simas Jurveršis, his fellow Lithuanian driver. And so everybody else still out on the track. This battle still rages on. 0.4 of a second last time they crossed the line. We're about to hit the halfway point of the race, and now there will be another 30 minutes plus 1 lap remaining. First and second, well, no surprises there, staying out. Suspecting they will stay out late into the window, suspecting that Ben Green will too, because he's got a fairly open bit of track in front of him. Sven Muller, but he might want to pit early, but Finn Gersitz, his co-driver, a lot less experienced, so they might decide they want to keep Sven Muller out there as long as possible. Right, the race lead, well and truly under challenge here. It is Marco Mappelli and Marco Wittmann running together on the track. It said 0.4 of a second the last time they crossed the line, but you can see that closes and opens up on every corner. Two completely different machines. The mid-engined Lamborghini versus the front-engined, engined, I'll say that one day, BMW in second place. Entirely different cars, but with the balance of performance leveling them up very, very equal here at the Nürburgring. But Marco Mappelli is probably feeling that the BMW is a bit more equal than his, because it looks like he hasn't quite got the pace for the number 56 car that is following his every move. So out along towards turn 8 they come, and then down towards the Vidal chicane, which will be turns 9 and 10. Watch them take the curb through the chicane. Bumping over that, they come out of the chicane in towards turn 11, out onto the pit straight. This is going to be interesting, because to me, it looks like Wittmann is close enough to potentially make a challenge. He's going to pick up a slipstream along the pit straight. Oh, maybe the gap is just a bit too big. There's some back-marking traffic in the way. That's Kim Louis Schramm just ahead of them. Along the pit straight they come into turn 1 under heavy braking, and Wittmann looks like he's just a little bit too far back from Mappelli to make a move this time around. So it's very much as you were. Jackson Evans into the pits from 6th place. He's going to be handing over to Tim Zimmerman, yesterday's pole sitter. So you can see the clock ticking down, but the leaders remain out, and I think they're going to be remaining out a bit longer. A lot of drivers leaving it late. Arjun Maini also into the pits as well now, and Nico Menzel, well, he'll be pleased to forget this afternoon. He's handing over to Janis Fitcher, and Arjun Maini handing over to Petru Umbra Rescue. But still, 7 drivers who stayed out. They've got less than 2.5 minutes in which to get in before the pit window closes. They do not want to miss the pit window, because that would bring in a big penalty. Now look at this, reaching the back-marking traffic ahead of them. It's Kim Louis Schramm in the BMW ahead of the leader. He looks like he's stepped out of the way, and good stuff. Kim Louis Schramm, excellent driving from him. He knows he doesn't need to be getting involved in this lead battle at this point. The fastest man on the track is Marco Wittmann, but he peels off into the pit lane. So now Wittmann, with less than 2 minutes remaining, is going to be handing over to Sandra Holzem. How close to the barrier did he get coming into the pit lane? He hits the brakes on the line. The clock starts ticking. Sandra Holzem will be ready. Now also Ben Green is in as well, ready to head over to Eduardo Cosseteng, and Elias Seppänen will be ready to hand over to Salmon Ovega. That speed limit in the pit lane is going to feel very slow indeed as they crawl into the pit box. So Wittmann to a stop. Here comes Sandra Holzem, a very impressive young driver, a very big star of the future, we reckon, and Project One has seen that, have taken him on board, given him Marco Wittmann as a mentor this weekend. And you have no better mentor than Marco Wittmann. So you can see from the clock, Marcel Marchevitz is also in, as is Kwanda Mokoena. So Sven Muller and Marco Mappelli will need to come in next time around. They need to get round to the pit entrance before the clock strikes 0. So Sven Muller trying to do something similar to what the HRT crew did yesterday and try and do an overcut by staying out late. Right, here comes Sandra Holzem. He rejoins Eduardo Kozateng, who's taken over from Ben Green, also out onto the track. So the two BMWs running together, but still two cars now. The leader's going to have to come in this time. Yes, he does. So Mapelli is in to the pits. I'm hoping Sven Muller is coming in as well, because if he isn't, there's a problem. In he comes as well. So everybody has now or will now pit. So in they come. Mapelli again keeping to the speed limit along the pit lane. And he will be handing over to Benjamin Heites. So here comes Heites, past the window, and helping Marco Mapelli out. He will jump in. Now, this is going to be really critical, because remember how close Marco Wittmann was to the race leader when the pit window, well, when Wittmann came into the pits. Now will be interesting to see whether Sandra Holzem in this, his second ever GT Masters race, has been able to do anything in terms of hot laps to do an overcut on Benjamin Heites / Marco Mapelli. So clock's counting down. Don't get to the pit exit before it strikes 0. Remember that. Sven Muller handing over to Finn Gerschitz. So here comes Sandra Holzem at the top of the picture. It looks to me as though Benjamin Heites is gonna keep hold of the race lead. Here he comes out of the pit lane, crosses the line, and there he is out onto the track. Finn Gerschitz also out onto the track. So it's Benjamin Heites who takes over the lead of the race. Well, takes over the seat from Marco Mapelli and continues in the lead of the race. And it's Sandra Holzem who's taken over from Marco Wittmann in second. Good job, Finn Gerschitz up into third place. So Sven Muller did all the hard work. Once again, the overcut on cars in front, and is up into third place. Eduardo Kozateng in fourth, Tim Zimmermann in fifth, ahead of Colin Carazani in sixth place, Alan Valente in seventh, Salman Vega in 8th, Simon Connor Prim in 9th, Kim Louis Schramm in 10th, Petru Umbrarescu in 11th, Yanis Fitcher in 12th, Dylan Yip in 13th, Jonas Karklis in 14th, and then it is Simas Judvershis in 15th place. So we can actually see what the order is now post pit stops, and you can see that it is Tim Zimmermann in fourth place, who's under pressure from Colin Carazani. To remind you, Carazani is enjoying his first ever race, first ever weekend, his second ever race in the ADAC GT Masters, and seems to be taking to it exceptionally well. Eduardo Kozateng, a less experienced driver, is taken over from Ben Green in the number 20 Schubert Motorsport BMW, and they've not come out of the pit sequence very well indeed. They are down in sixth place. So Ben Green, who started second, really was hoping for a podium at the least out of this, currently in sixth place, and Kozateng is gonna have to do an awful lot of work to move forwards from there. So Colin Carazani just ahead of him. Carazani trailing Tim Zimmermann in that fourth place. With everything settled down, we'll keep an eye on the gaps. It's 1.8 seconds between Benjamin Heites and Sandra Holzem. Finn Gerschitz is some 5.4 seconds behind them. So the 92 car continuing in fourth place. And there are less than 22 minutes of this race remaining. And we're looking at Eduardo Kozateng, who took over the Schubert Motorsport BMW from Ben Green. This is the fight for fourth place, though. Tim Zimmermann, Colin Carazani, and Eduardo Kozateng just behind him. And there's Alan Valente in the background as well. Here comes our race leader. So it was 1.8 seconds last time around. So we'll see what it is when they cross the line this time. Benjamin Heites, well, he's an experienced pilot, but not so much in GT Masters. This is his first season in GT Masters. Sandra Holzem has closed it up to 1.174. To remind you, Sandra Holzem has only raced GT4 up until now, and an Aston Martin, which is a different machine to the BMW. There's a logical statement, if ever there was one. In second place, closing in. So if he can catch up with Benjamin Heites It would be quite something if he could do something about getting into the lead. He's got just over 20 minutes to do it, and that is Alan Valente doing a bit of drifting. He's picked it up. Now, that was around turn 1 and into turn 2, and he survived that. The Swiss driver picks it up, points it in the right direction, makes sure that there's still a wheel in each corner. There is, so away he goes, but that wasn't the quickest way around turn 1. And you can see Samuel Vega behind. Now, did he get together with Eduardo Cosateng? I don't think he got together with him. He was just on the inside. There was less grip there, and the back end just steps out. Across the grass / dust he comes. He rejoins with 20 minutes remaining, and he is now in 7th place. Samuel Vega in 8th place, coming back from that early penalty that Elias Seppänen picked up. So they've come from 10th place up into 8th. But our race leader, last time across the line, it was 1.174. Now it is 0.8 of a second. So Sandra Holzem is closing in on Benjamin Heites. Now he's closing in. Can he do anything to get past him? It will be a really tall ask for Sandra Holzem in his first ever weekend in the GT Masters. But he is a skilled driver. He needs to hold it all together. No mistakes. I should think that the coaching he's had from Marco Wittmann is priceless. An incident between car 2 and 20, the one we just saw under investigation, that is Valente and Eduardo Cosateng. That is under investigation by race stewards. Now, I'm not going to venture what might be said by the race stewards, because we've already discovered how wrong my stewarding is, but they will be taking a look at the videos of that, and if they believe there is a penalty to be issued, then that will be no doubt announced very soon. Here is our race leader, Benjamin Heites. So 0.831 last time across the start-finish line. We do get sector times as well that pop up occasionally, but 0.8 of a second is that gap. So we look back at, I think it's from Dylan Yip at Jonas Karklees, if I'm correct. So I think the view from Dylan Yip at the Audi behind, and Jonas Karklees, who came from TCR Germany and has really enjoyed. I was talking to him a couple of days ago. He was saying how much he is really enjoying being part of the GT Masters. But it is very different to the Hyundai that he was driving in TCR last year. So again, another driver on a very steep learning curve. And as we guess, car 3 and 20, no further action. Oh, I was right on one for a change. Petru Ambarescu and Eduardo Cosateng, no further action by our race stewards for that little bit of drifting that we saw earlier on. Coming around the corner, that's Petru Ambarescu, round turn 11. Janis Fitcher for company, that 10th and 11th place. So after that spin for the 25 car with Nico Menzel at the wheel, Janis Fitcher having to do a lot of work to try and get back in there into the points. Everyone who finishes this race will score points, because points are paid down to 15th place, but every point counts. The championship is incredibly close, and Nico Menzel and Janis Fitcher, to remind you, coming into this race were second in the points, just 4 points adrift of the number 48 car, Samuel Vega and Elias Seppänen. So they really, really wanted to finish in front of the 48 car. Both of those cars have been very much in the wars one way or another during this race. So not a clean sailing experience for any of those drivers. Petru Ambarescu continues, as does Benjamin Heites. 0.8 of a second is where it's kind of settled at. Sandra Holzem in that second place, 5.9 seconds ahead of Finn Gersitz. Not entirely sure what Sandra Holzem can do to get past Benjamin Heites. It would be quite an ask for a driver who, no disrespect, is just relatively inexperienced. Now, car 3 has got a penalty lap for blocking in the pit lane. That will be Petru Ambarescu, or whether that was Arjumani on the way in, but whichever way you look at it, the 11th place car is going to have to pay another visit to the penalty box. So that'll be the 4th visit in this race. They're going to be fed up with that bit of track, aren't they? But that is for blocking a car in the pit lane, and that is going to hurt them another, effectively, 5 seconds on to their race time. Here comes the race leader once again, Benjamin Heites. Sandra Holzem in second place. The first two have broken well clear, nearly 6 seconds clear of Finn Gersitz. Finn is going to come under pressure from Tim Zimmerman. As already mentioned before, Finn Gersitz has come from the world of prototype racing, so this is something very different. He's taken for it very well indeed. Was a bit despondent yesterday after what was probably his toughest race of the season so far. But with Sven Muller, who has really picked him up and brushed him off, has done very well here in this race. If he could hold on to a podium position, he would be well chuffed. I think there is no doubt about that. But Tim Zimmerman, who is vastly more experienced, is closing in. Colin Carazani is not out of the question for a podium either in the Mercedes. There's a little way back at the moment. But Zimmerman will want to get past Finn Gersitz as quick as possible, because Colin Carazani may well be ready to pick up any mistakes that could be made or any challenges that don't stick. That is the view of Finn Gersitz, looking almost worried as he looks at the rearview mirror and just concentrating on the road in the team use by Race Motion. Great to have team use back again this year. Of course, so successful last year in the ADAC GT Masters. Came very close to winning the championship. And now Sven Muller, the master, teaching the up-and-coming Finn Gersitz, who is no doubt going to be a champion of the future, and taking to that Porsche very well indeed. But Tim Zimmerman, another driver who knows Porsches very well, in that 4th place and closing in. Colin Carazani, well, his gap behind is 1.2 seconds. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if he's closing in on Tim Zimmerman, because that will put the pressure on Zimmerman. He'll need to get a move on to get past Gersitz, otherwise he's going to have to defend from that Mercedes. So here we come again. And it is Gersitz in that 3rd place. Then Zimmerman and Carazani. Then a big gap back to Eduardo Coseten, Alan Valente, Salman Vega, Simon Conoprim in 9th. Kim Louis Schramm rounding out the top 10. So again, Finn Gersitz in the 3rd place. Under pressure, Tim Zimmerman shadowing his every move, looking for a route past. Gersitz, I can imagine that somebody who is less experienced in GT Masters, driving very much with the mirrors and trying to be as defensive as possible. And that's a great shot from Eduardo Coseten, looking back at Alan Valente in the number 2 car, getting up close and personal. Mind the camera, mate. Salman Vega sees a gap on the inside because Valente had to back out of it, but now also Simon Conoprim in there as well. This is quite a fight. That is for 6th place. So these cars very much running as one. Eduardo Coseten at the front of the queue. And it was almost Salman Vega, the driver who really has been something of a sensation this year, along with Elias Seppänen, leading the points coming into this race. Now under pressure from Simon Conoprim. The 20 kilo success penalty that he's carrying, weighing down that AMG Mercedes. Out of the Vidal chicane we come once again. Less than 12.5 minutes remaining of this race. And here is 3rd place, Finn Gersitz. Tim Zimmerman lined up behind along the pit straight. Out into turn 1, not close enough to do anything at the moment. Then it is Zimmerman, Carazani, and then Coseten at the front of this queue. These 4 cars, you get the feeling they're not going to finish in this order. It's 6th place Coseten, having taken over from Ben Green, goes very deep into turn 1. That is the view back from Finn Gersitz in the left-hand picture. Nice to see the camera is still working on Eduardo Coseten's BMW, despite a very close contact from Alan Valente. So Coseten in 6th place in just his 6th race in GT Masters. Alan Valente in the Mercedes, carrying the extra 10 kilo success penalty from yesterday, and behind them is Salman Vega with the extra 20 kilos. Right, a gap to the inside of Coseten. Anything going on there? Don't think so. Out along towards the Vidal chicane they will come in a few moments. And there we are into the chicane. And now we're looking down at turn 11. Right, around the chicane comes Coseten. Valente He's there, he's ready to pounce. Pushing, trying to force a mistake. That's the best way to get through. Force the driver to go wide, run maybe onto the runoff area or into the gravel. Eduardo Cosseteng focusing on the job ahead of him. 10.5 minutes remaining. Can he hold on to that 6th place? Alan Valente in that 7th. Still, Salman Avega in 8th. Avega looking eager. The person in a strong position is Simon Conner-Prim in 9th because he's got nobody behind him. So he could potentially mount a challenge on the 3 cars in front. Again, Avega looking. You saw him in the background of Valente. And Valente going to the left, going to the right, putting the pressure on Eduardo Cosseteng. Now look at this, Simon Conner-Prim putting the pressure onto Avega. All the drivers fighting each other. A great battle. Looking back from Eduardo Cosseteng's BMW, a different line. Still, Alan Valente remains behind. It is BMW from Mercedes from Lamborghini. Very evenly matched. They continue on their way towards turn 8. And at the front, Eduardo Cosseteng. There is Finn Gersitz, Tim Zimmerman, Colin Carazani, then a gap back to this fight here that we're looking at. So Eduardo Cosseteng still fending off the attentions from behind. Out along the pit straight they come once again to cross the line. They are nearly 10 seconds back from Colin Carazani, who's up ahead of them. So to the inside goes Valente. Got to be careful because Avega will be ready to pounce if he gets the opportunity. Now out towards turn 2 they come. Valente taking a tighter line into turn 2. It's a change of surface in turn 2. Sometimes catches the drivers out, but they remain as they are. Cosseteng still making that BMW as wide as possible. Alan Valente trying to find grip in places that were otherwise unexplored, and then Salman Avega behind, ready to jump. If Valente makes a move, you just know that Avega's going to jump into the gap and try and relegate both of the drivers in front of him. And at the back of that, Simon Conner-Prim in the Pole Motorsport Lamborghini. Last year's evolution of the Lamborghini, not as fast as the one that is leading the way, Benjamin Heites. Still with Sandra Holzem, he's 7.5 tenths behind. Then Finn Gersitz, Tim Zimmerman, Colin Carazani, staying very much as you were at the moment. Cosseteng bumping across the chicane again for the 34th time. Out onto the pit straight, once again we come. Right. Can anybody make a move? We're running out of time here. A little over 7.5 minutes plus 1 lap to get the job done. If Eduardo Cosseteng can bring it home in 6th place, that will probably feel like something of a win, considering the amount of pressure that's going on behind him. Alan Valente taking a much tighter line down that little slope in towards turn 2. Look like Salman Avega getting a little bit wild in the background. We ride on board. The back bumper of Eduardo Cosseteng staring at Alan Valente. And Valente still unable to find the route past. The fight for 6th place rages on. It is Eduardo Cosseteng at the front of that queue. Alan Valente, Salman Avega, Simon Conner-Prim. The time is running out for it all to change. You wonder if Valente could get past Cosseteng, whether he could do anything about getting up the road towards Carazani, but I think the time is running out to do anything more than 6th place in this race, unless, of course, we get a safety car / safety truck, in which case it really would be game on. But at the moment, Benjamin Heites holding off Sandra Holzem at the front, but this fight for 6th place is compelling. Heites has opened up a gap of about 3 tenths, so now nearly a second ahead of Sandra Holzem, so it looks about as far as 1st and 2nd is going to go. But the 6th place battle far from over. Eduardo Cosseteng once again along the pit straight. Avega, how impatient is he looking? Looks to the outside in turn 1. That corner was his friend. The outside line was going into turn 1 at the start of yesterday's race. and trying to repeat something similar. This is Eduardo Cosseteng. Great shot on board as he concentrates. Now Vega sees a gap to the side of Valente. The long way round, I don't think so. Now to the inside. The inside comes the outside again. That is not a regular place to overtake, I have to tell you that. In towards turn 5 they come. Around turn 5, still as you were. You've got a great view in the left-hand picture from Finn Gersitz in 3rd place as he looks back at Tim Zimmerman. He looks like he's got that one covered off. This is like a game of chess, isn't it? He who blinks first. And somebody's gone wide there. Who was that? Was that Cosseteng? Was that Valente? Somebody kicked up a bit of dust. That would have slowed the tyres momentarily. Valente, I think it was Valente, and now Vega sees this as an opportunity, tries to make a move across the Vido chicane. They come once again. Vega taking a tighter line out of the chicane. Valente goes to shut the door on Vega. Vega has the inside line. Out of turn 11 they come. It's a drag race. Mercedes versus Mercedes, but one of them is carrying 20 kilos extra. Side by side, in towards turn 1. Vega has the line into turn 1. Is he going to make it stick? Now the heavy braking. Can he slow it down? Vega, he just needs to hold it together. And he relegates Alan Valente, shuts the door in his face. Now Simon Connoprim trying to follow through as well. Around turn 2 they come. Wonderful driving from Salmon Vega. Really mature stuff. Alan Valente, all credit to him. He gave the space, but no, he spins. Oh, Salmon Vega, after all that hard work. Now, was there contact? Well, the Landgraf team, some are finding it amusing. I don't think many are, though. So Vega, having done all that hard work, spins. We'll need to see a replay to see if there was any contact there, but drops back into 9th place. Kim Louis Schramm in the background. Well, there's no surprise that that incident is under investigation. Let's take another look. It was a fantastic move, and Valente gave him plenty of space. He did all the hard work into turn 1. Now is round into turn 2. And Vega, well, it's all happened by the time we go to that shot. And it looks to me as though maybe Vega lost it on his own. We know what happens when I try to make these decisions, don't we? Well, we'll leave that one to the stewards. But, well, that has scuppered any chance of Vega finishing any higher than, well, 8th or 9th place in this race. Wow, high drama indeed. Here comes our race leader, Benjamin Heites, and there is Sandra Holzem, who has been keeping him inside. And if Sandra Holzem finishes where he is now, it will be a really good, solid drive. Yes, Marco Wittmann did a lot of the hard work, but you've got to drive the thing to get it there. And to stay within a second of Benjamin Heites in that Lamborghini is no mean feat. So Sandra Holzem showing just why he is deserving of a seat in the Project 1 DTM car. Benjamin Heites, he comes past the back marking Nordpass by Jutta Racing Audi, works his way past. So that is Seamus Vershis in the number 23 car. Not really in the fight with those particular cars in this race. Here to pick up the experience and put the miles in. That's exactly what they're doing. Finn Gersitz. How much pressure is he holding on to here? Less than 2 minutes to go, and he is holding on to that 3rd place from Tim Zimmerman. Colin Carazani in that 5th place. Now, will Zimmerman try any last-minute moves? 1 minute and 3/4 of timed racing. Once the clock strikes 0, the drivers will continue on the lap that they're on, and then there will be one more lap after that. And you can see how impatient Colin Carazani is, well as Sven Muller, looking fairly chilled about the whole thing at the moment. Although inside, I'm sure his heart is racing. Finn Gersitz, he has impressed so much this year, and he has just been troubling the leaders in pretty well every race. He's had a win along with Sven Muller. He's had a 3rd, he's had a 2nd, he's had a 5th. Yesterday's 10th place, he saw that as a big fail, but it really wasn't. He was carrying an extra 10 kilos of success penalty yesterday, apart from anything else. And if he can hold on to 3rd place,
that will feel like a win. They've got less than a minute of time to racing. I'm just looking at our race leader up at the Vidal chicane at the moment. So we'll see. Well, I think he's going to get across the line before the clock strikes 0. So it's going to be a couple more laps remaining of this race, I think. Benjamin Heites, here he comes across the line. So the clock has still got some 30 seconds still to go. So there'll be this lap and then one more before the conclusion of this race. Benjamin Heites leading the way from Sandra Holsen. Finn Gersitz in 3rd place from Tim Zimmermann. Incredible pressure. Zimmermann looks to the inside. Gersitz just holds it together. Needs to be not worrying too much about his mirrors, but just keeping his eyes on what's ahead. In the background, Colin Carazani ready to jump if any of the cars get together in front, but time is running out to improve on that 5th place for Colin Carazani. But it will still be a good result for him. 11th was yesterday's result. So to add a 5th place to that would be great news for him. So Gersitz in that 3rd place, last of the podium positions. Tim Zimmermann was thoroughly disappointed to have not turned yesterday's pole position into a podium. Wants to make up for it, get on that podium, but running out of time in which to do that. So out along the back section of the circuit at the moment, towards turn 8 they come. Finn Gersitz looking pretty solid in that 3rd place. There's a view from Benjamin Heites in the picture inset at the top of your screen. On the left-hand side, our race leader. And Sandra Holsen behind him. Right, across the line they come. This will be the last lap of the race. It's looking pretty comfortable for Benjamin Heites. I think Sandra Holsen has decided that 2nd place is going to be better than no finish at all, and it will be a good, solid finish in his 2nd ever race in the ADAC GT Masters. Finn Gersitz still in that 3rd position, ahead of Tim Zimmermann and Colin Carazani, Eduardo Cosseteng in 6th. Salman Vega in 8th place. He's behind Simon Conoprim in 7th. So after that spin, Vega has come back. No further action was the result of the investigation between the number 48 number 2 car. Just looking, number 2 car's got a penalty lap 3 times for causing a collision, but let's keep an eye on this here, because the challenge is on the Tim Zimmermann car, and Colin Carazani there as well, but still holding on. We're on to the final lap of the race. Along the back straight for the last time comes Benjamin Heites. But this fight has been raging on all race long, hasn't it? But Finn Gersitz hold on to that 3rd place at the moment. Into the Vidal chicane for the last time comes our race leader. You can see here he is into turn 11. Benjamin Heites is going to win the last race before the summer break. It is Benjamin Heites who wins, along with Marco Mapelli, race 6 of the season in the ADAC GT Masters. Sandra Holsen across the line in 2nd place, and a solid drive from Finn Gersitz. Across the line comes Finn Gersitz in 3rd place. That is a result, and Tim Zimmermann, ahead of Colin Carazani and Eduardo Cosseteng, although they have yet to come out across the line. I did mention on the last lap, there was a penalty lap that was awarded to, it was Alan Valente for causing a collision. So Alan Valente did pick up a triple penalty lap for causing a collision. But our focus is on Benjamin Heites, the winner of the race, and a really solid drive along with Marco Mapelli, turning that pole position into a lights to flag victory. Sandra Holsen along with Marco Wittmann in 2nd place, Finn Gersitz and Sven Muller rounding out the top 3. Great stuff from the ADAC GT Masters in this, the 6th race of the season. And some really mature driving all around. Salman Vega did well to come back into 8th place after that spin. But Alan Valente was a long way down the order, and the penalty laps that have been awarded to the number 2 car in the closing stages doing him no favours at all. Dylan Yip well, he did all right. 13th place along with Kwanda Mokoena. I'd say that's a pretty solid result for two drivers that are learning the ropes in GT3 racing. Here we go. Benjamin Heites, Marco Mapelli, Sandra Holzer, Marco Wittmann, Finn Gersitz and Sven Muller. That's your 1, 2, 3 ahead of Tim Zimmermann, Jackson Evans, Colin Karazani and Marcel Marchevitz. Eduardo Cosaden and Ben Green, 6th place. Simon Conner-Prim and Max Paul in 7th. Yesterday's winner, Sam Navega and Elias Seppänen rounding out the top 8. And then 9th through to 15th, Kim Louis Schramm and Neil Verhagen. A lively race for them. Alain Valente and Ralph Aron in 10th, ahead of Janis Fischer and Nico Menzel. That was not a great race for them, was it? Petru Ambarescu and Arjun Maini in 12th. Dylan Yep and Kwanda Mokoena in 13th, ahead of Jonas Karklis and Jonas Gelginis. And then it's Justas Junosis and Simas Juadversis who bring up the rear in 15th place. So Benjamin Heites peeling off into the pit lane, and a wonderful result for them and for Marco Mapelli. It'll be the first ever win for Benjamin Heites. He started on pole position in the opening race of the season, but was unable to turn that into a podium. But in fact, this is their first podium of the season as well. For Marco Mapelli, it will be his 3rd ever race win in the ADAC GT Masters. So, great job from the legendary GRT Grasser team, of course the team that are based in Niflfield, right outside the Red Bull Ring, and they'll be looking forward to their home race, which comes up in September, and hoping for something similar there. Between now and then, there is the Saxon Ring in September to be negotiated and conquered. And there is Mapelli and Heites. And there is Sandro Holzem and Marco Wittmann. Sandro, along with his twin brother Giuliano, were real characters in last year's ADAC GT for Germany. You can see here that Finn Gersitz and Sven Muller jump to the top of the point standings, ahead of Elias Seppänen and Salman Ovega. Tim Zimmermann and Jackson Evans into 3rd place. The point standings, the leader is changing after every race at the moment. Always trying to listen in, but nothing that I can understand. So there are the point standings at the moment. Eduardo Cosaden, Ben Green, 31 points adrift. They're not out of it, but they will be looking forward to the Red Bull Ring, where the BMW is traditionally strong. Now, great to see Finn Gersitz smiling and just feeling the confidence again. His mentor and friend, Sven Muller, has taught him so much. And they are quite the combination. And of the newcomers into GT3 racing this year, Finn Gersitz certainly one of the most impressive. Posing for photos. And of course, we have to acknowledge Team Use as well, a legendary team. Team Use by Race Motion, who prepare that Porsche 911 GT3R and do a wonderful job. They were so competitive last year in the ADAC GT Masters, came very close to taking the championship. And now Sven Muller, a relatively experienced pilot, and Finn Gersitz. And a moment to compare notes before the shuttle will arrive. And as with yesterday, the podium is somewhere around the other side of the circuit. So a taxi for the 1, 2, 3 has been hailed, and it will arrive very shortly. The drivers will be bundled into it and sent off over to the podium, where they will receive their awards. Let's have a look again at the point standings. Finn Gersitz and Sven Muller jump to the top. And that just shows how changeable this point situation is. They've been at the top before, and here they are again at the top. And Nico Menzel and Janis Fischer now 10 points adrift. They came into this weekend at the top of the point standings. It really is incredibly close, and actually any one of these drivers on your screen at the moment could win the championship. because you need to finish every race, and non-finishes are what are going to really hurt. So we're going to take a little look at the race that has just been, and it was the 63 car with Marco Mapelli that led the way into turn one. Ben Green did all that he could to try and go around the outside into turn one, but it was Sven Muller on the inside. But Marco Wittmann also challenging as well. All the cars made it into that first corner. You could see that was where the number 10 car got caught up, had to get out of the power and back out of it. But there was no doubt about our race leader. It was Marco Mapelli who stamped his authority on this race in the early stages. Then it was the challenge. It was Ben Green versus Marco Wittmann. And that was the depressing sight for Ben Green as the fellow BMW driver sailed past. Also, challenges into the corner. It was Nico Menzel who came under the pressure from Arjun Maini, and to the inside, the two got together, and it was Nico Menzel who went spinning and suddenly had an awful lot of work to do from a long way back down the pack. He was able to rejoin and did eventually make it back up the order, but it was nowhere near the points that he wanted. After the driver change, it was Sandra Holzem with all that pressure on his shoulders who took over the wheel from Marco Wittmann, and Eduardo Cositeng who took over from Ben Green. Then our race leader came in at the absolute last minute in the pit window. Marco Mapelli handed over to Benjamin Heites, and it was Heites who had to take over, but they came in from the lead, they emerged from the lead, and there was Sandra Holzem in the distance coming along the pit straight. Couldn't do anything about it. In the background, you can see Finn Gersitz, who took over from Sven Muller, who also rejoined out of the pit lane. Into turn one they came, and Benjamin Heites cemented his place. Yet more contact further back. That was Eduardo Cositeng and Alan Valente getting together, and it was Valente who was adjudged to have been at fault in that moment. The stewards had a look at it, decided that no penalty would be awarded, and the number 2 car had to do it all again after that bit of drifting. He got up close and personal with Eduardo Cositeng, trying to rearrange our camera along the way. And in the background, Salman Vega, who'd taken over from Elias Seppänen, was trying to get involved as well. Simon Cotter-Prim was at the back of that queue. He had taken over from Maximilian Paul. And then this was a fight for 6th place that went on and on and on. And it really was a race all the way to the line. Eventually, Salman Vega did find a route past into turn 1. And then, under braking, he got the move done, but then there was this, and it was the shot that we couldn't quite decide on, but the stewards decided on, because in just a few moments we were to see Salman Vega go a-spinning. It was contact from the car behind, and the number 2 car picking up 3 penalty laps as a result of that. The Landgraf team, well, some were smiling, some were crying. I think Salman Vega was one of the ones that was crying. He had all the work to do, fought back to 8th place, but it was the number 2 of Alan Valente that had to make 3 trips to the penalty box as a result of that, and he ended up finishing in 10th place. But at the front, Benjamin Heites brought it home ahead of Sandra Holzem. Finn Gers hits a mature drive, holding off incredible pressure from Tim Zimmerman to take the last of the podium places. Colin Carazani behind Tim Zimmerman as well. A very, very mature drive from him in his first weekend in the ADAC GT Masters. And into Parc Fermé they come to receive the applause from the team, none more so than GRT Grasser, the Austrian team, scoring their first win of the season in the ADAC GT Masters. So you can see trucks taking to the track. The cars are done for the day. We're back to trucks here at the European Truck Racing Championship, but we still have the small question of the podium to be sorted. Our taxi has done its business. It's got the drivers to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Taxi Driver. Sven Muller and Finn Gersitz take that 3rd step of the podium and deserve the biggest round of applause for a wonderful drive from this driver duo. Absolutely there in the championship hunt and heading towards the top of the table. Sandra Holzem And Marco Wittmann taking the second step in their first weekend in GT Masters. But the headlines is Benjamin Heites and Marco Mapelli, who win at the half-time interval in the ADAC GT Masters season 2023. Here comes a representative from GRT Grasser. Here comes the national anthem. So, in 6 races, we've had 5 different driver duos winning. Only 1 driver team has won twice. That's how competitive it is in the GT Masters. And it's a first win for Lamborghini this year, as Benjamin Heites and Marco Mapelli raise their trophies. Sandra Holzem, Marco Wittmann, second place. And Finn Gersitz and Sven Muller, the third place trophy. And a trophy also for GRT Grasser that will no doubt be winging its way back to their Austrian HQ. So, trophies awarded. There'll be a moment for photographs, and then the celebrations will start. It is the halfway point of the season in the ADAC GT Masters 2023. We're going to take a short break after this. It'll be September before we race again at the very different, the very undulating Sachsenring. Not only is it anti-clockwise, but it is a real challenge. Then it'll be the Red Bull Ring in September. Then it will all come to a close at Hockenheim at the end of October. It has been an enthralling race 5 and 6 here at the Nürburgring. Enjoy the summer. Join us again on the 8th to the 10th of September at the Sachsenring for round 4, races 7, 8 of the season. We'll see you then. Bye-bye. The 2023 season of ADAC GT Masters.